Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat show. My name is Aaron Urban. I'm your host today, and I'm a certified executive coach focusing on career acceleration for emerging and evolving leaders. So if you would like to remove those pesky roadblocks that are stopping you from seeing more impact, income, and influence, then this is the right place for you. And most importantly, if you're interested in learning more about the quote-unquote Great Resignation and what that means for you, as well as the current hiring trends now and into the future, you are in the right place, my friends. I am happy to be with you again here today to chat with you and share with you what it takes to elevate your career. What is your biggest question when it comes to the current hiring trends, how you can be seen, what your concerns are in the Great Resignation, whether you are looking for new opportunities or whether you are, like many of my clients, leaders who are now struggling with retention. So let's talk about our awesome guest today, because we do have a spectacular guest today, Jessica Miller-Merrell. She is a founder of Workology, and I'm very excited to have her on our show today, because she's an expert in workplace resource for HR. She focuses on recruiting professional and business leaders, or recruiting for professionals and business leaders. She is an independent president and CEO of Exceptional HR, Human Capital Strategy and Consulting Agency, and the published author of Tweet This. Jessica is listed as Forbes' top 50 social media power user, and because of vast industry expertise and knowledge, Jessica's professional opinions and expertise are sought after and sourced by publications and media, including The Economist, Forbes, CIO Magazine, CBS Entrepreneur Magazine, SHRM-SCP, for those of you who are not familiar with HR, it's SHRM-S, HR Magazine, that's SHRM's HR Magazine. I'm very excited to have her on the show because she knows what she's talking about. I reached out to her and said, hey, would you please be on the Career Coffee Chat show with us today and share with us your expertise and what it takes to get seen in this very challenging time and what it takes for leaders to survive and what they should be focusing on when it comes to HR robust practices. I want to say hi to Linda tuning in this morning from Kingwood. And again, if you're just tuning in, please say hi, say where you're from, and don't be shy. Ask your questions. But without further ado, let's say hi to our most important guest, Jessica. Great to see you today. Thanks for tuning in.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah. It's a very deep, evolving, I always have to say it's got breadth and depth. When we talk about that, we're talking about professionals' expertise. You say, we get breadth and depth. This topic has breadth and depth and keeps evolving. Before we dive in, I would like to know just a little bit about what was your catalyst. There's always something behind any individual who really focuses and throws their passion into the ring. And you're very active, and you are very active. You just got back from an HR conference, in fact. So you're very active in that space. What is the catalyst, your passion behind what you do with Workology and your other venues, of course, as well?
So I'm an early blogger. I started a blog in 2005. And at the time, I was talking and writing about career advice and resources. And I was using that to fill roles at my organization. And my employer back in those days didn't like my blog. And I ended up getting fired because of my blog.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And obviously it was a pretty traumatic thing. And I really thought long and hard about how I can help contribute to the space. And so it really fueled this. What happened to me really fueled my passion to be able to help inform and educate human resources and workplace leaders on technology tools and resources that they need to be successful, because there's so many things changing. And at the time, blogs and social media were still really new, and they were seen as an evil thing, not an asset.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember those days. In fact, I distinctly remember the senior vice president wandering by my cubicle as I was a leader at that time, a senior leader, internal consultant and continuous improvement. And I was an active blogger. In fact, I was very active on LinkedIn and just starting to wrap my head around how important that is for your one's professional development. Mm-hmm. And he walked by, he said, I saw one of your articles on LinkedIn. We don't do that here. I was like, no, you're right. You don't. That was a different company. So after that, I was very circumspect about what I shared because it could be taken out of context, perhaps. I want to say hi to Carla tuning in from Cyprus. She's in the midst of a casual job search after a 2-year career break. So she's looking probably to learn some of those tactics that she can be considered an ideal candidate, particularly in this very challenging space. So for you, Jessica, what are you seeing? What are those top things that are evolving right now that you're seeing coming up in the HR and hiring process space?
It's an interesting time to be recruiting or hiring. Definitely interesting as a job seeker right now. What I'm hearing from HR and recruiting leaders is they aren't able to find qualified candidates that want to come to work, that want to do the job. And this is across industries. It's not just restaurant and hospitality, which is what I think we hear a lot in the news. Yeah. It is finance, it is tech, it is in government. They're having a hard time bringing qualified people in, even in to start the interview and the selection process. And I think that's because a lot of us have, maybe Carla, you've taken a little bit of a break. And people have reassessed, and maybe they're generating some income doing DoorDash or Instacart or some of these other gig work or side work instead of working in a traditional employment.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I'm going over here to my notes because I pulled together a lot of notes. I was like, I'm going out there and doing some research because the Great Resignation is very fascinating to me from a neuroscience and behavioral science and social psychology perspective. And I'm a nerd. So I had to go do that. And it's really interesting because they mentioned somewhere, let me see here, that, okay, so 1 in 3 American adults already have a quote unquote side hustle. And it's expected that as many as 61 million more will follow suit in the next 8 to 12 months. So that might be a contributing factor because we're interestingly seeing an even greater surge in entrepreneurship and interest there. Do you feel like that's impacting things?
Absolutely. We've taken some time. Maybe you were laid off, took a leave, voluntary, involuntarily, whatever it is, or you are saying, hey, I don't like where I work right now, or things are changing and it's no longer in alignment with who I am. Right. And so I want to explore other opportunities. And we've already had major upheaval in our lives. So having a little bit of change and exploring side hustles, gig work, things like that, why not? Why not try something else new? It's not, you are just going through a small thing. This is a major thing for everyone in terms of a life event. So seize the opportunity, try out some new things and see what sticks. So I think that employers are experiencing more people who have said, hey, I'm going to try this consulting thing and I'm going to go out on my own or do social media work or something like that. And, they're going to supplement in other ways. It's not just unemployment. And I think that's been the news that we've seen over and over again in major media. Unemployment benefits with COVID have been extended or ending soon. People already made choices long before unemployment of what was going to be happening in their lives and what they're going to do. Some people have left certain industries altogether and they found work in a whole new other area or market.
That's right. And people, that's one of the number one questions I get in my career advancement work with clients is, what's trending right now? Where should I be focusing? And a lot of people are like, if they're in oil and gas, and if you're in the Houston, Texas area or related, oil and gas is a big driver. And of course, as we know, it's not doing as well as it used to, and not predicted to do as well as it had historically. So a lot of people are leaping ship, if you will. They're jumping ship. They're going somewhere else. And they're talking, well, how about renewables? To be frank with you, renewables don't pay the same as oil and gas traditionally because of just how it was comprised, instructed, the grassroots, where it came from, et cetera. Won't go into all that.
but also they're inundated with other people who are fleeing oil and gas and thinking, oh, go to renewables. Maybe not. So there's other options too. And I highly recommend people consider, if you are considering a career pivot, reskilling. Are you seeing a lot of that too, Jessica, reskilling?
Absolutely. I took time during this downtime with COVID to get some additional training myself. I invested in myself and got certified in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And I think a lot of other people are doing the same things. They're getting their PMP certification. They're taking classes online at LinkedIn or Udemy or wherever. The online course market is exploding right now, and there's no shortage of opportunities for you to get trained, either free. Facebook and Google and a lot of these major companies have a lot of free resources available, or through, people like us, entrepreneurs who have different courses and programs in maybe a new area that you're interested in pursuing. So I think, why not gain a little bit extra skills and tools in your tool belt? Just be really focused and thoughtful to make sure that this skill that you are investing in, and whether it's money, but it's also your time, that it is in alignment for whatever you want your future career to look like. And I think that's really important to focus on 6 months, 12 months, 5 years down the road in terms of your time investment and your skill investment.
Yes, absolutely. Thinking, and I think I know a lot of professionals have taken the quote unquote pandemic pause to reflect. And it's interesting, so many people have mentioned, I've never really had time before to actually slow down enough to consider where my career is going. We were suffering from the open door syndrome, one open door, next open door. And then I get the mid-career crisis individuals who are like, I've just gone through one too many open doors and I'm somewhere where I don't like what I'm doing, or I don't like, the team I work with, or what have you. And they need to make a shift. It can be scary. So thinking about how you can make that shift and reskilling and getting certifications based on where you want to go is great. I want to share, Hussein is tuning in. How are you doing this morning? Tuning in. He said, the loss of jobs began with the pandemic as a tendency to work remotely in most fields. Certainly a lot was affected, especially those who did not have availability and that sort of thing. Therefore, I see that the time for innovation and showing the stock of experience must take its turn to eliminate the phenomenon of job loss and waiting for the opportunity. It's time to create the opportunity ourselves. He's very eloquent.
I would say he sounds like an entrepreneur to me. That's a very entrepreneurial mindset. And I have been a business owner for over 10 years. And, I love that. It can be scary, but also you are in control of your own future and your own destiny. And then you can make your own rules. And your corporate career, I think, can be that way too. Now is the time to really take pause and take stock. It's okay to slow down and take some meaningful breaths and time to really consider what you want out of your career, out of your life, personally and professionally, for you, for your family, whatever that is, and then set a clear goal and expectation, and then milestones that you can work towards.
Absolutely. We are 100% in agreement there.
Good.
100% in agreement, because it's so important. And also want to come back to those people who are actively seeking opportunities. We've talked a little bit about the entrepreneurship was fantastic. I'm thrilled to see that people are, investing more in themselves and basically betting on their own expertise and confidence in that space, because that's fantastic. It's so important. And also for those people who want to get back into the market, I'm about to hit you with a real twister, Jessica. So are you prepared?
I'm ready.
I coach a lot of experienced and seasoned professionals. You know where I'm going with this, right? People who are 50 and over, struggling to get back into the corporate market. Now, with this, hey, we can't find qualified talent, I say BS, because I personally know of so many very qualified yet more seasoned professionals who cannot get hardly a "how are you doing" in an interview. What's going on there? Because I have my theories. So what's going on there? Why is that happening?
It could be a number of things. I think a lot of times organizations think that they need a certain kind of person and they have a certain experience and maybe age in mind. And so when they look at somebody with 20 plus years of experience on their resume or their application, they think and believe that person is going to be either too expensive or is going to find a better opportunity in 12 months or 24 months along down the road. So I would encourage you to use your network to find opportunities, because you have, a face-to-face or some sort of IRL relationship with that person that you can build on, or come in as a consultant, maybe in a short-term opportunity that can move into maybe a full-time permanent position, or you can do some things to update your resume so you don't look like you're over 50, which I have a lot of feelings about. I don't think that we should have to do those things. But when you can get in the door, you can wow them with your skills and experience and let them know that you're looking for the right place. And hopefully it's a good match for you and that organization.
Now, how do you feel about these individuals actually not putting their, because as you know, with applicant tracking systems, a lot of them require.
So typically as an HR person, I don't see access to that information. So you could change your birthday. I really only need that for the background check or when we're doing new hire orientation after I've extended the offer. So I think that, for me, I would maybe remove any dates of when I got my education, only go maybe back like 10 or 15 years of experience. You can put in kind of the summary section or a qualification, some bulleted information about maybe other skills from other places that you can talk about. But the key with your resume and that initial application is to get you on a phone call with that recruiter and hopefully in an in-person interview where you can talk more about you. It's, if we think of ourselves as like a computer, right? There's an initial thing that draws us in, advertisement, which could be our resume or application. But then when you're going through the purchasing process, most of us are looking at some of the specs, key differentiators. That is your more experience and those specific things that you can talk about. You have to think of yourself in terms of marketability. I think a lot of times people just make assumptions. Oh, she's over 40, they're over 50, they're going to be retiring soon. I heard at the HR conference that I was at, a woman, her name's Miss Opal. She's the grandmother of Juneteenth, and she's 95 years old. And this woman is who I want to be when I grow up. And I think we need more voices like her and others who are standing up and saying, hey, just because I'm over 50, 60, 70, 80, 95 years old, don't count me out. I've got a lot of more work to do. And I think that's the next class of people that we are going to be focusing on in terms of employers. There is a great opportunity to invest in people over 40, over 50, and reskill them in different areas. So employers are looking at new options. Apprenticeships are really starting to be big right now. We see a lot of employers looking at second chance hiring, people who have criminal records and felony convictions. That other category are people over 40 and 50.
And it's a shame that it needs to have a category. And we don't need to get on that soapbox because it's no point. We have to deal with what is at the moment. And, it's very interesting because we have the knowledge gap issue in the U.S. particularly. And then there's this weird paradox where it's, oh, you're over 50. Well, okay, wait a minute. You need someone to come in and bring up the younger talent and mentor and coach them. So that is a great place for these people. They give them coach training, give them mentorship training, let them be that reskilling resource versus, oh, you're going to be too expensive. Well, maybe not necessarily. And here's the thing I encouraged some of my more seasoned professionals to do. Call out the elephant in the room because they're thinking it, right? They're thinking it. It's going through their mind. The hiring managers or potential supervisors, whatever you're interviewing with, they're thinking it. So how do you feel, Jessica, about just saying, I know this is probably on your mind. Let's talk about this so you can know where my passion is.
So I'm a very transparent person, and I see Carla's note about too expensive is my theory. If I'm too old, then I don't want to work there. I totally think that if you're worried about salary ranges or being lumped in that category of being too expensive, you should explore as early as possible what range they are looking for and having those conversations. I don't know if I would position myself as, I know that I have a lot of experience and you might be intimidated, but I think there's some different ways that we can position your skills and experience as an asset. And I would focus pre-interview, pre-conversation with 4 or 5 of those, have prepared bullets, practice with a friend, your spouse, your coach, whoever, so that you can walk into that and articulate it exactly. One of the things that I see happening a lot in interviews is people bring their stuff with them. You might not know, Carla, that you might just feel comfortable or you with me in the interview, and you might tell me that you think that I might think you're too old, or you'll bring in something about an old boss. And then I'm like, ugh, this person sounds like they might be some drama or they have baggage. So you do want to have prepared conversations as much as possible, because I think sometimes we treat interviews like therapy sessions. At least I feel like a lot of people tell me all their things. And I want that as a recruiter, because I'm looking for things, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I'm looking for things to disqualify you from the job. Okay, at least in the initial phone screening, I'm looking for things that are flags, red flags that you're not going to be a right fit. So if you're concerned about age or experience as being something that's going to keep you from getting to that next stage, you need to have very specific experiences and messaging planned for you to talk about it, because a lot of people bring in all their stuff. They tell me about their beliefs. They tell me about really how long they think they're going to be in the job. Or you might tell me that you're thinking about moving to Florida, and I might make the inference that, oh, everybody who moves to Florida is going to retire. So really think through and be methodical about those important key points you're going to talk about in especially that first interview, because if you don't get past the first, it's normally a red flag situation. Second and third, that's normally a culture fit or really experienced situation. You're getting down to the brass tacks of the job and where they see you compared to other candidates.
Yeah. So do you agree then of being more in the first interviews, it's about likability, bringing your UVP, your unique value proposition, and really talking about how you're a great fit at that
Absolutely.
level.
Do your research. Think about your differentiators, your key points. It's no different than any sales conversation I have with someone. I am talking about why I'm important, why I'm special, why I'm different. And I have a pitch. Practice your pitch. You want to make sure that you can articulate and get feedback. It might take you 3 or 4 months to get that pitch down. Startup founders, they pitch all the time, and they are practicing and working on figuring out what are those things that resonate with their audience, their buyers, their investors most. It should be the same way for you. So that's what networking is so great, because you can go out and practice your pitch. So get on the phone, talk to some folks. Don't use your interviews as practice sessions. These should be where you've honed the opportunity and you are ready to sell and explain why you are a great addition to the team and what you can bring to the table.
Absolutely. And if you are a more seasoned professional, Jessica, do you agree that when you're in the second and third, particularly when you're speaking to the potential hiring manager, and you sense that there might be some cold feet on their part, just saying more about how passionate you are about what you do and how much energy you bring to the experience may help them get over or through some mental blocks they have if they're thinking about they might retire. Are they really going to invest their time? You'll talk about, I'm looking forward to adding value here and really growing something. I'm really passionate. Bringing that energy in is so important.
I think a direct approach, if you're comfortable, is best for you to just say, here's an example of who I am. And you can just say, this is the value that I bring. And that way you can just find out, because one of the things you don't want to do is take this job and then find out in the first 90 days or 6 months that it's not right for you. So I personally would rather be upfront as much as possible, especially like even when I'm working with clients, I want them to know the whole me. And because they're more likely to we're not going to have problems, or they're making a choice just the same as I'm making a choice to work for them. Employment is the same way. So you're going to have to work with this hiring manager and their team for 18 months, 24 months, however long. So bring those things to the table. Don't do it in an abrasive, aggressive way. Really think through the back and forth. Chris Voss, he's a hostage negotiator, and he has a really great book out that talks about hostage negotiation, just negotiation in general, and the back and forth. It's a must read for every job seeker, entrepreneur, business person, because your words matter. And the back and forth, which is what an interview is, it's a negotiation. So you want to think through not just the first answer, but the long-term back and forth that's going to be happening, so you can get your point across, which is, hey, I am a good fit for this job because of XYZ. You might be thinking of these things without saying, too old, retiring soon, but here's the value that I bring, and doing it in a way that moves them along. You aren't calling them out specifically, but you are helping them come to that point in the negotiation where they're like, wow, I can't live without this person. I need them on my team. Or maybe they say they're not a right fit, because I do believe that one no is just another step to yes. So you were learning, and maybe you dodged a bullet if you didn't end up at this opportunity when you were down to the final two candidates. So being your whole authentic self is important. And if they are not going to hire you because you're over 50, you know what? Move on to the next as quickly as possible so that you can spend your energy and time and share your gifts elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. Great advice. Thank you, Jessica. I want to say hi to Abba, tuning in from Sierra Leone. That's a long way away. We appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you.
Hussein's got another tidbit of wisdom here. He said, do the conditions of companies in the search for distinguished and high qualifications, may they affect the lack of employment, also the performance of the company? So that's a very complicated question, but how do you feel about that?
I think that sometimes employers have really high expectations of what they think you should do in the job. But right now in the market, with it being so competitive, this might be one of the reasons why an employer might be experiencing a lack of applications, because their salary doesn't match the qualifications, or they're looking for the wrong people in the wrong place. So sometimes it's going to take employers a little bit of time to come to a point with themselves to realize that even though we're remote first, mostly right now, hybrid environment, they all think that this means going to be lower salary. But for certain positions, highly skilled positions, like you're talking about, Hussein, it doesn't matter if you're remote or in person in the office or in between. It doesn't matter if you're in San Francisco or you're in Omaha, Nebraska. You're going to have to pay a premium for those people. It's taking employers sometimes a little long to come to that point, and they might be missing out on great talent. And there are a lot of companies that can't find the right people. And I think it's because they have thought, I'm going to be able to get people for really cheap because they're all working from home. But those knowledge workers and those highly skilled people, it doesn't matter if you're in person or remote, you are in demand.
And I agree with you. I'm seeing a lot of conversation virtually about, the pay scales. Should we pay differently based on geographic location? If you're working remote, should we pay, remote versus in person differently, which I highly disagree with, because that smacks a little bit of, bias and not necessarily EOE. I don't know. That's pretty tough. Of course, you're familiar with the Colorado debacle. Employers we're not hiring anybody from Colorado because we don't want to share our salaries, because we don't want to pay the people that already work for us more money, because when they see what we're hiring for, they're going to ask for more money. Yeah.
That's going to bite them, right? Because there is so many people who are leaving jobs and leaving open positions, increased stress and workload on the people who've chosen to stay. And it doesn't make for a great culture. So we're going to continue to see more people resigning over the coming months until things start to settle. I also think it's a great time if you are currently employed and you're being underpaid, you need to go to your boss right now and say, hey, I need a raise. And here's why. And this is what I add to the table. And I need $10,000 more to be able to make this work, because maybe they've experienced some pains and they have had a challenge finding talent, they need to be adjusting their compensations with the market. And typically you don't see that with employees who have long tenure, right? They might get a 3 to 5% pay bump, but maybe the market is dictating 15% right now. So hop on in, make a case for it, sit down, have a candid conversation, but be ready to start to job search if you need to, if that's what you really need, if money is your motivator here.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but I did go on a rant before I left on vacation about the Great Resignation. I really started thinking about this. I was like, this has been a long time coming, to be honest.
Absolutely.
It's been a long time coming, and companies, sorry, suck it up, sunshine. You put yourself in that position. You're not developing your internal talent. You don't have a robust talent development program. That's number one. You're not training your emerging leaders, so your mid-level managers who do have a lot of impact on the culture of the company. So you're not giving them access to coaching. You're not telling them how to people, which has a lot to do with it. So you have then toxic cultures, which are forcing people. That's, you've heard the adage, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. And unfortunately, in most cases, that is true. When I'm interviewing folks, with the consultation call before they start working with me, I hear that 9 times out of 10. So there's some validity there. And then we got that and the unfair pay. I was like, wait a minute, I've been here 20 years. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. I said, yes, when you leave, if you decide to leave your current organization, he's been there 25 years. Yeah, so you can expect at least a 25, 30% pay increase.
Yeah, don't accept just a 5 to 7% pay increase. That's why I always recommend talking in ranges with people. So do the research in the market. They're going to ask, that recruiter's job is to find out how much you make so they can give you a 5% pay bump. And I don't want to talk disparaging on recruiters, but they're supporting a business and profitability. So do the research in the market. If they ask you what your pay is, tell them that you're looking for, or based on the job posting, your acceptable range is $150,000 to $175,000. See if you're in the market for that. And then as you're getting more information about the conversation, you can decrease or increase that range and say, this turns out to be a lot more complex than I thought it was going to be. And based on that information, my salary expectation is 160 to 180. And that is totally okay to do. But as a recruiter, HR person, my job is to find out what you're going to be in so that I can put you into a pay range. I have a range in mind already, and they have that information. But don't say 75 is what I need. Say 60 to 85, right? Because when you think about negotiation, when you just give a number, you're locking into that one number. And you need to have the range to let them know where you need to land. But if you haven't changed a job in 25 years, you should expect, I would think, a large bump in pay. And the other thing I would say to job seekers, if you are in multiple offer situation, my sister's actually interviewing for a job right now. I hope her employer isn't on. Likely no, but she has 2 interviews and she has an offer coming for one. And then she has a second one that she thinks she's in the final stages and she's expecting an offer. So use that to your advantage. That's a really great opportunity for you to increase your income very quickly. And I would think that you should be able to get, $7,000 to $15,000 more because you've had that second offer, because it creates.
Who would you recommend in this situation? And anybody tuning in either now or later when you watch the replay, please don't be shy. Please pop your questions in the comments. If you have any questions about the hiring process or how you can position yourself wisely, we're here to help. But my question for you is, Jessica, that's interesting, but I did have someone reach out to me there in that current situation. They haven't gotten the second offer yet, but they have gotten the first offer and they're expecting the second offer. What does that look like? It's hard, right? You're like, oh, I really like this one, but I've got this one and that's good too. What do I do?
You want to accept the first offer, I would think. Obviously negotiate for the best salary that you possibly can, because you are protecting you. and popular opinion probably in HR, but I'm thinking of you as the individual. So if I was talking to an HR person who is in a job search, not HR who's representing a company. So I would say accept the first offer and then wait for the second, and then you can make a decision. So when that second company sends you an offer, you can say, oh, this is a little low. I already have another offer. And you can let them know what you want. Again, give them a range or, and I would see the worst that can happen is that you get a no and then you go back to the other offer. But it's just like the housing market. When there are multiple offers, people are willing to pay above asking. So put yourself into the same situation, but be smart. So you can be upfront and go, oh, that was a little low. I'm really excited about working with you, but I have another offer. I need to be in the $85,000 to $100,000 range, knowing that your offer is, let's say, 76. Okay. So you're already going to better yourself a little bit. And then whatever they say, honestly, wait till you get your offer letter, go back to the other place and say, hey, I have another offer. Hopefully you don't want to go back and do this 3 or 4 times. You're going to have your offer rescinded, but you have one chance. So go back and say, hey, company number 1, I have another offer. They're offering me 88. You're my preference. It might not be money that you need at this point. You might want a sign-on bonus. You might want relocation. You might need a cell phone, right? Yeah. You might want to be fully remote. You have other things that you can ask for. So factor that into your decision and be real clear. You might want 2 more weeks of vacation. Now is the time to ask. Don't expect you're going to get all the things, but you have another signed offer in your hand for 86. You can say, I'm willing to accept an offer at 86 plus, I want an extra 2 weeks of vacation, or I would like a $10,000 signing bonus. Okay. Right. Think about it this way, and then you can leverage yourself and put yourself in the best financial position to do whatever you want to do personally for you and your family or professionally. I think it's smart, and employers and businesses are doing the same. They made a lot of hard choices this year, reductions in force, a lot of furloughs, layoffs, and things happen. Arm yourself with knowledge, be prepared for that negotiation, but it's totally acceptable. Just don't go back another time. I think
3, 4
one
times.
shot and the employer is going to say, you are a problem. I can't deal with you. Rescind offer and go. But you're gambling a little bit. But I think that in this current market condition, you will win.
Yeah, I have heard some reports say that people being managers are more willing to negotiate now than they were even 2 years ago. So that's a positive note for professionals. And by the way, if you're a seasoned professional and you have 2-3 years of, 2-3 years of vacation, be great. 2-3 weeks of vacation. Don't feel like you have to start over at ground zero.
No, ask for more. Make that a condition of employment from the beginning. And then that way you deserve that time off. I have seen, and every industry and job's a little bit different, but I've seen some companies. I saw somebody on Facebook earlier today saying that they give their new hires 2.5 days of personal time the first year. No freaking way.
What?
It was not an executive level job, but you should be able to come in and say, I want 3 weeks right away. And this is the salary that I need. But it's not just always about money. Maybe you want to finish your MBA or have, remote. Get these in your offer letter. Because sometimes what happens is you change bosses and then you have this verbal conversation. It's not in writing with them. And then they're like, I can't help you there. So
I've had that happen personally.
Yes. Yeah. Make sure that's in your offer letter.
Salary increase because I was coming in at a fairly competitive rate for what I did. And I was promised a 5% salary increase within 6 to 8 months. I did not get it in writing. I was a much younger person then. And guess what? It never happened.
Yeah, even if it doesn't have to be in the offer letter for something like you're describing, Erin. It could be just an email that says, hey, just recapping here. This is what we talked about. I'm willing to accept your offer, but I want some clarity. You said that I would get a 5% increase after a 90-day review. And then you have an electronic writing. You want to get them to respond yes, because then if you need to, you print that off, You bring it to your boss on your 90th day and say, hey, I'm just checking in to see where my 90th day review is. I'm really excited to get some feedback from you. And oh, by the way, I should be getting a 5% increase. And then if there's backtracking on that, you have electronic proof that you can go to HR or your boss's boss or whoever you need to be able to give them an opportunity to make that right.
Perfect. So for you, Jessica, what are you seeing in some of the top trends, people who are seeking new opportunities, whether it be externally or internally? What are some things that they need to be aware of? We talked about having your unique value proposition. We talked about the interview process. But what are some other things that you're seeing people need to be aware of during their search, whether it be internal or external?
I really think you need to have a plan of what your career trajectory is going to look like. And I don't mean a concrete in stone, because everybody's a little bit different. I thought I was going to be in HR forever. And then I started a blog and it completely shifted my worldview and my goals and plans. But for you to think 2 years and 5 years down the road and then have those milestones that you can work towards, it's also important to talk about those in the interview. So they might say, where do you see yourself in 2 years? The answer isn't, well, I want to be in your job or I want to be here with the company. You want to show them progressive experience. Well, I plan on getting my PMP certification and working towards that in the next 2 years. And I would love to, explore, or I'm open to relocation. I'd like to be an expat. Like, there are some different things that you can talk about. So I do think you should have a plan. That's really important for you to think about what your career is going to look like. So that as a point of reference, you're showing me, the hiring manager, HR interviewer, that you have your stuff together and you've done the work, or you're planning on doing the work to be able to become even a more valuable asset than what you were before. I will say that you need to have your online marketing on point. Please, if you have a bunch of political propaganda on your social media, delete or disconnect, because the internet is forever. And an increasing number of companies are doing what they call social media background checks, and there are internet researchers. I can find things about you that you probably didn't know existed. And it might be something from 7 years ago that you said on Twitter when you were 20. So make sure that your social media is buttoned up and that you are presenting yourself in a professional front. That means photos, that means LinkedIn, that means Facebook, that means your YouTube channel that you haven't updated in 4 years. All these things are searchable on the internet. And the more resources that you have that paint you in a professional way in this picture that is a must-have employee that's going to be an asset to the organization, the easier it is for me as the hiring manager or recruiter to say yes to you. And 30% of all hiring managers are searching for you on social while they're interviewing for the job. So please have those things buttoned up. If you are not familiar with LinkedIn or these tools, that's where you work with a career coach or expert to help you turn these things around and really leverage them to your best of ability.
So we do have someone who's tuned in who does have a little bit of a checkered past, according to this individual. They're tuning in from YouTube, not from LinkedIn. And they did ask, okay, so if I do have a less than traditional background, let's just say, what do I do if I want to go into more of a staid type of career, such as, reporting on public media or something else? What do I do? How do I handle that? Do I go back and erase everything, which would be very challenging to do? What does that look like? How do you approach that? And can you even approach it?
Ooh, this is a toughie. You're throwing me the tough one. So you probably have a stage name. I guess I would do a pretty deep dive forensic search into what is being said about you. Was your stage name, was used interchangeably with your name? And you might want to consider changing your name. So you might want to consider, for example, I'm hyphenated. So I'm Jessica Miller-Merrell. There's only one of me. But if I had something on my background, like you're describing, that I didn't want to spotlight, I might go ahead and change my name legally to Jessica Miller. There are a million Jessica Millers. So being able to find or to know, now this might be uncovered during the background check process, but typically for the background check, we're only looking for criminal convictions, felonies, misdemeanors, that sort of thing. They're not doing all the research. So that would be my recommendation, is maybe you do go to court, invest some money in a legal name change, pick something that is similar, but not the same for something like that. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't not disclose your employment, depending upon how far away it was and how comfortable you feel with your employer. So you'll have to make that judgment, but at least get yourself into the position where you can talk about your skills and experience and qualifications. And then once you've built that relationship, you could say, oh, by the way, this is something that I feel comfortable sharing.
So great advice. Thank you for that, Jessica. And that did bring up a really quick question for you, because I do have some professionals who are concerned, oh, okay, in the background check, what are they going to look for? Because I put, February of 2019 instead of it was, January of 20. There was actually a 2-month gap there. I filled it in so it didn't look so bad, or it was 3 months and it was, that sort of thing. Is that something they really look for, or is that done differently?
I think it depends on the organization and also depends on the level of position. There are some high profile cases where executives or CEOs have listed degrees or experience that they don't have. So just know that they have the right to revoke that offer if you did make some adjustments. But in general, work verification is not super common. It does increase the higher up the executive ranks that you go. So you do want to make sure that you have buttoned up, and people are okay with a couple months of time off. I feel like more now than ever before for a career transition, especially when you're at a senior level and you're making $200,000 a year. It might take you 6 or 8 or 12 months to be able to find the right opportunity for you. So just know that if I am doing a verification and I'm looking at employment, that means I have to call, which is cumbersome. I'll use a third party oftentimes, call to verify your employment. The date might be off. A couple months, I'm okay with. 3 years, not so much. That's definitely a flag. And employers are doing these not to disqualify you from the job, but to protect themselves from inaccuracies, because we want to make sure that you have your degree or your work experience so that we can justify paying you the level of compensation or putting you into that position in the organization that we think you're qualified for and we've extended you an offer for.
And legally, they're allowed to ask what? Because that's come up as well. Oh, I'm looking for, but particularly now with algorithms, you have to express what you're looking for based on your trajectory, particularly on LinkedIn. So they may have said, oh, what was a data analyst - project manager or what have you. And project manager wasn't actually a part of their title. They were actually a data analyst, or maybe they had a title that didn't have anything to do with what they were doing at all, and they changed it. Is that something that comes up?
Not so much. Really, I'm calling to, when you're doing checks for employment, I'm calling to see dates of employment. People's job titles changed. I often, like when I worked at Target, I had some ridiculous job titles, like the ETL of team relations. Really, I was an HR manager. So I think it's okay to make those adjustments because corporate speak isn't always the same as the market. And you make a good point about search engine optimization for that. You just pick the best dates that you can. It's your employment application is different than your resume, depending upon how you use that, or even your LinkedIn profile. You have a little bit more leeway, but if they are going to do employment checks, and those are going to be more common in highly regulated industries or the government. So if you are looking at you're a federal contract with the government or something where you have a clearance, you do want to make sure that things are buttoned up and that you have the dates accurate. But if you are looking to be the director of sales for a fintech company, it's probably not as important to have those exact dates for you.
Okay, great. That's good to know, because a lot of people are concerned. Oh, what are they going to ask? Take, for example, if some people were terminated for cause, is that something they can ask?
They can ask that, but normally I think you should work on your responses for this type of situation, because as an employer, I might be asking that because I want to see your reaction, put you in an uncomfortable place, and then try to get some truth from the situation. So you can say it wasn't the right fit for me. I had some personality conflicts or the job didn't meet my expectations, there are ways to position a involuntary termination. I've been fired from a job, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't be talking with you today. It was because of my blog. And I didn't talk about it for a really long time because there's a lot of stigma around being fired, but it happens to more people than you know. Most employers aren't going to ask. They're just going to say, hey, why didn't it work out for you? And you work on your script, your messaging to say why it wasn't a good fit. You don't want to negatively disparage, but you want to give them enough information so they feel satisfied so they can move on. You want to paint yourself in a good light.
Right. Absolutely. I was fired from my very first job I had held ever. Talk about traumatizing. And of course, as a young perfectionist, that was terrible. And it was because back then in the it was mid-90s, I think it was. Work clicks. I didn't click, so they fired me because I wasn't a part of their little clique.
That's okay. Yeah.
And back then it was okay. Oh, sorry, you don't go out to drink with us after work.
Yeah, that's not the right place for you anyway. Yeah. It was not. I don't like the politicized kind of clique environment. It's not one that I have ever really fit in. And being in HR, normally you aren't in the cliques anyways, because next week I might be investigating that clique for discrimination or some employment situation.
Exactly. So Hussein asked, in Saudi work contracts and the list of workers after the end of contract. Oh, so basically this is a non-compete. So a lot of them, it's a non-compete. So for them, maybe 2 years and a competing company in the same activity, in addition, apparently for them, an existence of a penalty for disclosing the secrets of previous company. So that's, obviously non-disclosure of, my brain is still on vacation.
I'm not a Saudi employment attorney, so I would say get with an attorney to understand, because here in the US and in Texas where we're at, non-competes are not really, they're more just going through the motions. Employers can't really enforce those. And especially with the digital world that we work in, they might try to have you sign a non-compete, not just for the state of Texas, but for the whole US, which isn't reasonable. And as case law has not yet caught to the current situation that we're in with COVID, and on the regular, I will negotiate my non-competes and non-disclosures. I had one not that recently, but at least read them. Number one, read what you're signing. Absolutely. It's okay to say, hey, I need to let my attorney look at this to review. And it might just be you send it to your mom, whatever. Just have another set of eyes take a look, and you can ask or suggest revisions. I had one that came through that said I couldn't work with these certain type of companies. It was an international company, and they said you can't work in these industries for a period of 3 years. And I'm negotiating some work with them. We just finished up, and I said no. I already work with some of these companies, so I want to disclose that to you. Number one, and I don't feel comfortable signing this, so you can get with your attorney to make some revisions, right? Legal Shield or something like that. They provide a lot of low cost resources where you can get some advice. I just sent them a copy of my NDA. It was a mutual NDA. I sent it to them electronically and they were okay with it and they signed. But it's okay to give yourself time to review those materials. The offer letter is a contract. Your non-disclosure, non-compete, you can say, hey, I want to have somebody else take a look at that. And as an HR person, I'm going to say, oh, I don't want you to do that, but okay. But they're really not enforceable in general across the board. Again, I'm not an attorney inside of the US. Most of the time for me, we have people sign non-competes more as a scare tactic, just to keep salespeople from taking their book of business with them to their next employer. So I might have an attorney send a letter afterwards, and after they left, if they went to a competitor, just to say, oh, by the way, you did sign a non-compete. But that was more just to ensure that it was just, again, a scare tactic. We didn't ever actually do anything with it. That might be different in your experience.
All right. So before we wrap up, and thank you, by the way, Jessica, this has been fantastic. Sure. I hope all of you tuning in now, and for those of you watching the replay or listening to the podcast later, hope you enjoy this because it's been very interesting, informative, and insightful. And before we wrapped up, I would like to focus again back on what we call the quote quote unquote great resignation, and where we're looking for that to go, and what are some of the things that we can perhaps keep in mind, because we have so much talent leaving companies. One of the concerns I have as someone who's coaching leaders, for example, is that attrition has a cost of knowledge being left and not transferred. And that's scary. Actually, it's really scary and a big burden on executives who are trying to manage those gaps.
So for executives who are concerned about turnover and losing really great people, you need to tell your people that you're concerned. And that means having conversations. And if, depending if you're remote or in person, like, you should be scheduling 15-minute calls with your direct reports first, and then start utilizing what are called skip level interviews. And this is where a manager skips a level and talks to the next level down of people. Talk to those people, build relationships, check in with them. Hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? If you are really concerned about losing your people, you need to talk to them. But most importantly, you need to listen and then make meaningful change. If they give you a recommendation that says, hey, I don't ever hear from you, I'd like to talk to you more often, you then need to take this feedback and do something. Not talk to them all individually every month or every week, but say, hey, maybe I'm going to do a monthly Zoom call where I invite all my direct reports and we answer questions. Submit your questions in advance and I'll answer questions. Build those relationships, but it has to be intentional. And then when you do make that change, so you listen to that feedback, you implement this Zoom call for your direct reports, you need to tell everybody what you're doing and why. So there's a story behind it, which says, hey, employees, I had some skip level interview meetings with some of you. I listened to your feedback, and here are some changes that I am making as a result of these conversations. I value you so much that I'm going to invest my, and whether it's a Zoom meeting or change of benefits, or maybe giving them one Friday off a month for mental health, whatever it is, creating a communication strategy once you hear that feedback to tell people the changes that you've made. This is so important. A lot of times we make the changes, we don't tell the story of why, and then all those other people are like, well, I met with him and I never heard anything back. So close.
Or that was my idea and they stole it, is what I hear.
Yeah. Yes. That happens a lot. So you just need to acknowledge. So that as a manager, just send them an email or a Slack, say, hey, Bob, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I loved your idea. We're having a meeting in a couple of weeks. And I came up with this idea because of you. That person is going to feel so valued and excited that you listened and executed on that. And I think that's the biggest disconnect between executive leaders and employees, is just that communication, or they don't feel like they're heard. So spend some time and then let them know that you've listened. That's the beginning of creating a great culture where people want to stay in your organization. Make the culture so great and your relationship with them, that trust building, so awesome that it is a risk, even for more money, for them to, when they leave, it's not worth it. Because what if I end up with another person that's my boss or my boss's boss that I don't like?
It's interesting you mentioned, that part of it, that culture part of it, because that's bigger than money. Yes, money is important.
Absolutely.
Equal pay, correct pay, leveling that paying field, if you will, that is so important. And by the way, speaking of leveling paying field, I'll be talking to Rick Gillis, who authored the book that's coming out very shortly about leveling the paying field. So Jessica, if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend you looking it up. It's very interesting, revolutionary in what he's talking about. But anyway, back to the topic about pay. People are actually saying was an MIT Sloan Management Review, Liz Fosselin, I probably mispronounced that, head of the content at Humu. So that's Humu is a company that uses data to help make employees happier in their jobs. They dug into the numbers. What do the numbers say about the root cause of why so many people are leaving their jobs? First, she confirmed that your experience has probably already told you burnout is rising and is likely to spike even higher in the coming months. And yes, one big reason why employees are handing in their notice. This is a big reason. She also says that people are experiencing a lack of quote unquote meaning. So they're not receiving emotional support. They need to thrive and they feel like they're stretched too thin. So personal plug here for ICF and the coaching industry. Hire coaches to coach your managers and supervisors to help them become leaders, because what we find is executive coaching is reserved for the executives. Here's the interesting thing. Jessica, as you probably already know, executives have what we call the success paradigm. I'm an executive, therefore I'm successful. I don't need coaching. So come in earlier and help develop those people skills to help retain your talent, develop those great coaching cultures. So anything else, Jessica, that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up today? It's been such a pleasure having you on.
It has been wonderful. If you have questions or you need further insights, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm on all the social medias of Jessica Miller-Merrell. You can also go to workology.com and take a look at some of our resources, mostly for HR and workplace leaders. But it can give you some insights into what you might expect as you're into job search, or where our heads are at as HR recruiters or business leaders.
Yes, absolutely. Reach out to Jessica, connect with her on LinkedIn and all the other social channels. She's very active. And of course, check out workology.com is where her landing point is. And lots of really interesting information, a beautiful website too, by the way, I might add. So it's been a great pleasure again having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights and information. Thank you for all of you who are tuning in and either watching the live show now or the replay later or the podcast. And feel free to check out the podcast on all the major channels. And if you haven't done so already, give us a thumbs up or a star rating. That indicates how much you enjoy what we have to bring and fabulous guests we have like Jessica. So until next time, friends, keep elevating.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.